I've spoken to Carl many times. I know you've been super preoccupied with coaching. You're very established in this industry. You've been doing this a long time. And do you see yourself being a coach continually through the next years to come? Or are you curious and interested in a whole bunch of other things that you want to try as well in this life?
To be honest, mate, it's a bit of both. I don't ever see myself not coaching. I think it's probably a tough thing for me not to be coaching, not to be working with athletes, because that's at the end of the day, that's what I love doing, and that's what I'll always love doing. There's certainly some bigger fish that we're trying to cook up at the moment, and certainly trying to share the time around a little bit more and be more efficient with things. Obviously, building a really good team around me, a really good team of coaches that can manage a lot of things, but ultimately. I don't think there'll ever be a time where I don't have athletes that I'm coaching, but it certainly may shift to doing a lot less hours on the floor and probably more sort of flying in, flying out a little bit more as things start to get a bit bigger. But ultimately, mate, I love doing it. Like at the moment now, if you speak to any of my coaches, if we've got quieter sessions, I'll step off the floor and try and get some other work done and stuff like that. But always ultimately touch base on the floor and make sure that all the athletes are good and stuff like that. I think, especially if I'm always going to be based in a facility, there's always going to be that attribute. I'm always going to want to be on the floor and catch up with athletes and program for athletes and coach athletes and stuff like that. So I certainly see that role minimizing a little bit to free up areas. But yeah, look, mate, ask me in maybe another 10 years, I might say something different. But I certainly don't see myself not coaching, because I also know when I don't coach, that's I mean, a lot of the ideas that I present on, a lot of the things that I do, a lot of the stuff that I try and implement with my staff and my coaches and stuff, it comes from coaching. Like if I'm not coaching, then I'm never presented with problems that I need to solve. I'm never presented with ideas that I can use. So if I'm sitting down and certainly going through the business side of things more these days, but if I'm always doing that, then I'll certainly shift away from what I'm good at, to be honest. And the addition of having Carl next to me as my business partner means that it certainly allows me to continue to coach, because he can continue to evolve more of the business structures and ideas. Obviously, we always do a lot of things together and talk about everything and are across everything, but people out there that are coaching and running a business know it's two separate energies. It's two different mindsets. It's two different conceptual things that you need to build and work on. They certainly don't cross over that much when it comes to planning. So being able to have that separation has been really good for us, I think.
How do you then separate? Yeah, how do you separate it? Is it like pure delegation where, Carl does what he's great at, and he'll still teach and things, but you've delegated that role mostly to him and other people? Or is it just a different delineation of your time? Like this goes here on this day, this goes here on another day.
Yeah, I don't think it's like as hard a delegation as that. Like at the end of the day, it's I coach and Carl does business management. They're the two areas. That doesn't mean we don't cross over and help things and do things. We've got a lot of things in the pipeline now where something will pop up and I'll chase something up that's not coaching. And then there's other things where Carl will be walking through the floor to chat with someone, and one of our junior athletes is doing something wrong, and he'll just grab them and help them. So it's certainly not that, like, you stay in the office, I stay on the gym floor type of thing. But ultimately, that it is when it comes to, like, Carl won't program for anyone, whereas I do the programming with our coaches. When I meet about programming and coaching, I meet with my coaches. There's no need for Carl to be there. The same side of it when, Carl's doing his business mentorship with different coaches out there. I'm not involved in that. I don't hang around that. I don't come into it. That's, he's running his business mentorship. And then, the other side of it is, when we meet with our accountant, we both meet with our accountant. When we meet with some business side of it, we both meet with them. It's certainly a dual role there, but we kind of we kind of just know what each other's strengths are and who takes care of what.
How did when you first began that relationship and that kind of beginning of Athletes Authority, like if you, because so many people, they start businesses themselves or with other people, what would you tell them starting out that you and Carl have established now to be such a well-functioning, well-structured organization and relationship that you kind of wish you knew or other people are making common mistakes with?
I think I've probably said it before, but for me, the thing that makes myself and Carl work so well is because we are very different. A lot of people sort of talk about, oh, you've got to have a strong relationship with your business partner and connect and everything like that. And don't get me wrong, we certainly have a strong relationship. We do connect, but we are very different in a lot of ways, which is what makes us so strong. Because like for example, if I was to start a gym, the chances of me starting a gym with someone that is identical to me is very high. I might be a PT, might be a coach. I might be at a club where I'm working with an assistant that has a similar values as me. It might be on, fitness first on the gym floor, and I connect with another PT really well. And, we both love, Franz Bosch or Poliquin, or how good's this? We chat about that. And then we start going, oh, let's have a beer, or favorite pub together. We both like all these things start to connect. And before you know it, you've connected with this person so well. Like this guy, that's great. And the only thing is, it's just a mirror image of yourself. So of course you love them, and of course you're going to connect with them because
you just love yourself.
Exactly. It's easy going, and then you go, well, it would be great to make a business together because we work so well. We're on the same wavelength. We think the same. We have the same. Like these type of things are probably, I suppose, a knife in disguise when you connect on so much and you are so identical that you actually create that tiny mini echo chamber of just you two always agreeing and always going, this is where we need to be and stuff like that. And ultimately, when it comes to push comes to shove, you've got the same weaknesses and you've got the same blind spots. You've got all these things that you've got no one there that's telling you the opposite. I think with me and Carl, the key with us is we both share similar values and similar visions, but we certainly don't share similar ideas on everything. There's a lot of things that we differ on, from fashion sense all the way through to business decisions, and that's what you need, because ultimately you need to be going toe to toe with each other to get the best result. Because there's things I would never have done that has worked really well, and
like
I'm sure there's.
Do you actually mind mentioning something, because that's interesting?
Yeah. So for me, a lot of our, I suppose, views on the way we stand up for different, whether you want to call it political views or industry views and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Carl's really good at articulating and stuff that we go to and from. And probably the other way, if Carl had his way, then he'd probably be sending a lot of posts on US elections and stuff that's happening in China, all sorts of things. But he doesn't. But we do find a good balance of what we fight for and what we stand up for and believe in. I think there's the other part of it, when it comes to even a lot of mentorship things and content stuff that I just would never have done if Carl hadn't have been there and said, no, it doesn't need to be like this. Let's just get this out or do this. Which is a big area, and then vice versa when it comes to just different systematic structures on the gym floor, our coaching, programming. If it wasn't me, then it wouldn't have been like that. So there's certainly areas where we complement each other because we are quite different, and we do discuss things, and I want one way, he wants the other, and ultimately we meet in the middle, and it actually works really well because we've got a bit of both. And I think it's an area that has been really good for us because it keeps us honest and it keeps us probably accountable to each other. And you asked, what would I have known that I didn't know previously that could have helped? And I don't think I didn't know this, but I think if someone's going into a business relationship, the best thing about myself and Carl is we can go toe to toe at each other about things, argue, get heated, and it doesn't change anything because we know it's just a discussion. We've blown up about a couple of things here and there, and it is what it is. But that's what gets the best result. That's what gets us going in the right direction because we've vetted anything that comes out that people see publicly has already been vetted by ourselves, going back and forth with each other. So it ultimately gives the best product, in my opinion.
When you have those moments, when those conflicts, the medium size and the explosion size. How do you guys resolve it? Like, what is the conflict resolution process that you guys like not unconsciously probably go through in your brain to meet at a middle ground?
To be brutally honest, there is none. When the conversation ends, we know that's the end of it. We certainly don't carry anything on, and we will argue till we come to a conclusion. Right. And sometimes he wins, sometimes I win, sometimes we're in the middle. There's certainly not a conscious process or an unconscious process, I guess, that we go through. But I think the key to the conclusion is knowing that it doesn't move forward from where we're at. If our recent conversation was about gear, about our like apparel, and we had a big blow up about things. And at the end of the day, it's about that. That's all it is. Once that finishes, we've got another issue we go on about, and our personalities change. It's not like a relationship with your wife or your partner where things can sometimes drag out into the night and in the morning and stuff like that. It's just, it is what it is, and we know it's nothing personal. It's just making sure that we get the best result.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's no real strategy. I'm trying to piece apart like how another coach or person could take that, but it sounds like you guys have detached a bit of your own ego from it, or tried to at least, and just see the problem as it is instead of putting yourself or your own personality and taking things personally.
Yeah, well, it is. It's one of the things that is like, at the end, like nothing that we do is personal. There's certainly things that you can interpret as being personal, but I think especially in our industry, a lot of for example, like a coach can use a method, and then someone says, "Oh, I don't like that method," sure. And for some reason that coach feels like they've attacked their family.
Yes.
Well, it's not that. So at the end of the day, like when you put that coach that meets a similar coach on the gym floor and says, "Let's start a business," and then they both go toe to toe about something that has absolutely nothing to do with them personally, but they're taking it personally, it's never going to be successful. It's never going to produce the best quality content or business structure or coaching or anything like that. And that's the thing. If you ask any one of our athletes, to be honest, even an athlete that joined us 3 weeks ago, they will go straight away. They know they can tell you straight away that me and Carl are completely different people. But that's the benefit to it. That's we have that balance of yin and yang that allows us to be able to maximize everything we do, go toe to toe with everything we do, but also know that it is not anything against that person. It is simply a contextual component. But I think it also takes, I don't know how you say it. You might say it might take age, it might take experience, it might take mentality to be like that. But ultimately, it's in my belief from a business standpoint, it's the way you got to go. And if you've ever worked with head coaches before, that's how a lot of head coaches are. They see something, they call it out. The next 10 minutes is completely something different. At Parramatta, Brad Arthur was a great example. He'd come in, he'd fire things left, right, and centre, attack people for this, for that. And then that was it. That was the end of it. Once he'd said it. There's no need to dwell on it. You move on. And the next conversation is a completely different conversation. But for him, that's how he got things out. He would see things, he would say it, he'd move on. Other people dwell on things. And I personally, I can't stand that. That's, again, what Carl and myself do really well. As soon as we see it, we call it out. It is an area that when you start dwelling on things, people start to become passive aggressive. People start to do things and start to resent others. And it's a big area. And we try to instill that in our coaches as well, the people that work for us, that if there's something there, call it out. If there's something you don't agree with, even little things. We've got a physio, Justin, that is messy as all hell. And I'm happy to say that publicly because he knows it. And he'll leave a coffee cup somewhere. And straight away, I get it out of here, mate. It can't be here. And that's the type of thing that if it starts to build up, then people build resentment and people build anger towards it, rather than just, mate, this is the standards. This is what happens.
So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. How do you then create that when you work with a team of people? How do you create a culture that is effective and everyone is on the same page? It's not always going to be the case, but how do you keep those standards across the board consistent among all the people you work with?
It's always hard. It's about everyone being accountable. And what I mean by that is it means that, if Carl's messy, one of our coaches can call him out. Like just because, we're the ones that pay the bills and pay the wages, it doesn't remove us from being held accountable.
Mm.
And that's the difference with it. It's making sure that it's an environment where people know, like, I mean, I would be shocked if my coaches said anything different, but if one of my coaches took the piss out of me, it doesn't change anything. You know, it's not like, you know, it's still funny whether I said it or they said it. It's, you know, they have the freedom to be able to be like that and feel comfortable to be able to speak their mind, be who they are, and also on top of that, call people out for things that are not to standard. And it's probably a long way around, but the best way to keep standards is to hire correctly. I hate advertising for assistant roles or senior roles because I haven't vetted them, and I don't like committing to someone that I haven't seen under pressure, in action, getting up early, staying up late, you know, trying to get to work when they're sick, or these type of things. Like, you got to be able to see that before you hire, which is why I value our intern program so much. And you know, we've just literally this week we're transitioning. It's the last week for 3 of our interns, and the first week for another intake of our interns. And of the 3 interns that are graduating this week, 1 is coming on board as physio and head of performance for one of our AFL teams that we're associated with. The other one's coming on board as one of our coaches within our ADP program, plus lead with one of the female AFL programs that we work with. And then our third one is also doing exercise physiology work for us. So we've got a couple of EP clients that he's going to take on board. And that's because we've seen them under pressure over the past 6 months. We've seen them on the gym floor. They know our systems, they know our standards. So when we bring them on, it's not about, as you said, how do you hold people to standards? How do you get them to align with your standards? It's about finding the people that share the same standards as you, because at the end of the day, you can't really change people. I'm not a massive believer in that you can really change people. You can certainly tweak things, ride the wave of maturity. As people mature, they change, and you just don't know which way that's going to go. But obviously, you're hoping as people get more mature. So you might get a young coach that's 21, and they're a bit lazy with standards, and they might not value some things. And over a 5-year period, they evolve and mature and learn lessons that ultimately allow them to value that. But there's certain people, mate, to be honest, like as an example, if I hire someone who's messy, they're probably still going to be messy in 5 years. You know, you can try and get them to be more accountable with things, but ultimately people sometimes are just who they are. They're those innate traits. So for me, I think the way we align with standards is about how you hire and who you bring on. And there's certain people that you run that, like, you know, there's certain people that tick a lot of boxes, and there might be one box that you can accept to deal with and manage because it may not be as high up on the totem pole and you value something else.
Sure.
And that's what brings your group dynamics. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. They're not all clones, but you're certainly probably pushing shit uphill, I reckon, if you're hiring people that just are far removed from the values and the standards that you hold dear, thinking in a couple of months you'll be able to suddenly change these people into the person you want.
But that's so important though, right? Because how many of us, and this is not just coaches, but human beings, do we try, like relationships, romantic or not, we try, and even the ideas, like we might have an idea, like this is the way to live, this principle, this idea, nutrition, religion, whatever, and we try and convert people. We try and get people onto our side, even like you guys, athlete dominant center. But it's going to be a lot more effective for you if you communicate with athletes who are already bought into the idea of strength and conditioning, right?
No, 100%.
How do you... So I just wanted to highlight that, such an important point. But then you said you have this key criteria for coaches. You have this key criteria that you just mentioned very briefly. To stay up late, you want to see how they are under pressure. If you had like, I like using the word pillars. If you had like foundational principles and pillars for these coaches, things that are like ideal, mandatory, expected, ideal characteristics of a coach that you guys look for and you look for, what would they be?
Yeah, I think how long's your list? There's a fair few things there that start to roll in, but if you're trying to separate them, a couple of things that probably stand out for me are one is attention to detail. That includes punctuality. That includes the way they look when they dress, that they keep themselves and hold themselves with respect. And that doesn't mean everyone's perfect. One of our interns currently, the first feedback I gave him is that the way he holds his posture is not something that's going to command authority on a gym floor. folds arms, slouches, leans on things and stuff like that. So straight away, it's something he's got to work on, which he's been doing a fantastic job with. So things like that, for me, that attention to detail then transfers over to, programming wise. How do they review their programs? Do they check reps and sets? Do they check the percentages that they've set? Do they write something, then reread it? With emails coming through, their spelling mistakes, have they missed words, with like little things like that, ensuring that they're sending things out publicly that have been vetted by themselves, re-looked at, and people don't just rely on this quick answer to something and then put it out into the world without reviewing. Next part would be their energy. So realistically, we want people that have a good energy. Now, not everyone's going to be extroverted, but they certainly need to be able to switch on energy when they need it, because ultimately on a gym floor and anything like that, we need them to be able to bring energy, bring enthusiasm, and that doesn't necessarily mean be loud, but I think we can all tell when someone's flat and someone's not flat, even if they're not saying anything. You can sense that. So having people that present with energy, and when we're interviewing for interns, that's one of the biggest ones, because I can't really teach that, unfortunately. Yeah. That's something that you kind of need to bring, or you don't bring. If someone comes in and has no idea how to coach a squat, I can teach that. Yeah. That's the easy part. But if someone comes in, has zero attention to detail, looks disheveled, and has no energy, they're three things that's going to be very hard for me to teach. So that's where we talk about accountability and standards. They're lining up with our standards. That's what we believe in. We want people to present like that. So they're probably the first key pillars. But then one of the big ones is looking for people that understand that to get to where they want to go is hard work, and they have to put in hard work. Things don't come to them. In this day and age, people double click on something, they select something, they push order and get a 3-hour turnaround on delivery. Like, everything's so instantaneous these days that it's probably hard to shift that mentality from some people. And I think it's really important to make sure that when we're bringing people on, those pillars, those standards are that for any change, any results, you've got to put in the work. And that doesn't mean just turning up and that's it. It means turning up, committing to doing things, pushing yourself further, having goals, targets, things like that to work on. So we want to look for those life learners that understand that they need to do the extras to start pushing through, and people that just get things done and make it happen. When you say, "Oh, do you mind grabbing this or doing this?" It's straight away, "Yeah, no worries," rather than, "Oh, let me just," like all these sort of ums and ahs and buts are the things that you just don't want to see from people that you're looking to bring into your staff, for your standards. We need to have people that are willing to just do what they need to do. And when I say willing to do what they need to do, it's not like, "Oh, can you scrub everyone's shoes or anything?" It's senior roles. It's like, can we make sure we get testing for this athlete? And I've got interns now and coaches now. They're like, 100%, you need me to add this. Do you want me to grab this or do this? You're like, how good's this? Versus others that just sort of do the bare minimum, or I can't quite make it in at that time because it means that I'm going to have to move. The train only leaves at 6:20, so I mean I have to get on a 6:05 train. And you're like, I don't want to hear all of these barriers and these problems. I want to see how you can action and do it. And like I said, that doesn't mean we're going to put them through the ringer every day. It's just that type of energy and that type of commitment you can feel from someone very quickly, and that's what we want. They're the underlying pillars of what we look for in our intern group, because ultimately they become our staff. And the ones that become our staff are the ones that have really maximized those pillars, but then have the ability to add on top of that. And what I mean, that might be, someone might have really good pillars, intern A, intern B, very similar, but intern B has the intelligent capacity to take on more of the methods, more of the systems. He's more creative with program design. These type of things that layer on to have a good coach turn into a great coach, and ultimately they're gonna stand above the rest. But we don't know that until we put them through the intern program and see who steps up. And sometimes people that you don't expect are the ones that step up. But I think if you're always hiring from an intern standpoint off those sort of grounding pillars that are very hard to coach, then that's where the fun happens, because you sit back and see who absorbs what you're teaching and how you're putting them through and who steps up at the right time. So
that 5 minutes right there, for anybody who want to work at Athletes Authority, that's they better watch that one right there. That's
Oh, sorry, mate. Give me 2 seconds. My little vacuum robot's just kicked in. I'm going to have to turn him off. Hang on.
vacuum robot. I don't think we've ever experienced that before on any podcast. Vacuum robot. Yeah, my vacuum robot, I got to turn mine on. I don't have it though, so that's Athlete's Authority.
Sorry, mate. If anyone has animals, I can't recommend the old Samsung vacuum robot.
They're actually they're good.
Oh, unbelievable! Yeah.
But actually,
they save a lot of time.
No, that's not okay. That's a really good. Okay, what is it? Do you actually know the model? Because I'm all about time.
I wouldn't have a clue. Would not have a clue.
Okay.
Samsung something. I think they only make two different. There's the big one and the small one.
Okay.
Go the big one.
I was going to go somewhere else, but now I'm thinking systems and automation. Okay.
Yeah.
We all have a finite amount of time in the day. We want to spend that valuable in how we want to. And you don't need to, if you can mitigate an hour of vacuum cleaning a week, that's 365 hours a year. That's huge, right? Now you can do some other shit you want to do. What are the big systems and time-saving habits you've created in your life personally, and you can talk about the gym too, that you value the most, or you wish you had earlier even?
Yeah. How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Let's go big ones, biggest bang for buck.
Yeah, realistically, I'm a big believer. Like, when in doubt, refer out, as they say. And I do. For me, from a systemized point of view, programming structures is massive for me, and what I've obviously evolved in over team sport environment, and now in a obviously a private sector, building out a systemized approach to the way we program is a big area, and it's not only big for my time saving efforts, it's also to be able to allow us to maximize our coaches' time, because ultimately in our environment, we have a coach that then also has a specific number of athletes that they manage. If it takes an hour a week to manage one program, and we give them 40 athletes, that's 40 hours. So straight away, we start to get limited. If we can cut that management time to 30 minutes, then suddenly, instead of 40 hours, we've halved it, so it's down to 20 hours for 40 athletes. So by the same premise, they could manage 80 athletes. Obviously, it doesn't quite work exactly like that, but that's where we head. We want to make sure that we can obviously get our coaches on the floor to coach, but we also don't want to be limited by, they've already hit their maximum athlete tally, so we need to get another staff member, which obviously costs us more money. Then we've got to find time to get them on the floor. Obviously, we don't have coaches programming for athletes when they're not getting floor hours because they never see their own athletes. So we've set up a pretty detailed systematic programming structure that involves me writing the base programs for all of our sports. And they filter down to my coaches, and then my coaches edit based on individual positions or sports or injuries or anything like that. So it allows the coaches and frees up the coaches' time, and allows them to just focus on the slight nuances for their athlete rather than having to think through big blocks or large blocks of training where they have to plan everything out. So that's something I do to save them time, but also it saves me time as well, because for my athletes, it's the same. It means that every 5 weeks I'll manage the larger programs, set them into our program software, and then that goes down to all the athletes to allow my coaches to edit and allow me to edit. So when I'm editing my athletes' programs, I've already got those base programs ready to go. So it makes my time a lot easier.
I think that I want to pause on that one. I think it's such a huge one, because we take it as I used to take it as a pride of pride. It's like, I took a long time to write a program. I heard Joe DeFranco talk one time on a podcast. He could take 45 to 60 minutes to write a program for some of his well-established elite athletes. And I thought, wow, okay, he's taking a lot of time and care, but it's not very efficient, and it can be done more effectively, I think, especially when I have these conversations. So, do you plan to make that publicly available to people, or is that very insular? That's only Athletes Authority coaches?
Great question. Depends if people want it or not. No, it's mate. Look, we're not known for our secrets. Most of the stuff we do, we make public, and it's certainly not a secret. I'm more than happy to share it. But there's no doubt. Like, that's not to say that programs don't take time, because I firmly believe that sometimes programs take time. And when people look at programs, some coaches or athletes look at a program and you see 6 exercises, people are like, okay, well, how long did that really take to write those 6 exercises? And it's not how long it takes to write the 6 exercises. No. It's how long it takes for you to argue with yourself why you haven't put in 20 other exercises. And for me, that's what I find with writing the base program. So when I write the programs, obviously, it's based on the sport. So, for example, one of our major ones is field. So if you compete on a field, then that is a base program. Whether that is an AFL field, a soccer field, a rugby field, obviously they're all football codes, but even cricket, baseball, you're still implementing force into the ground that is grass, dirt, anything like that. So that creates what we're going to be based that program on. In season, out of season is obviously one of your major differentials on that as well. So if I'm writing that out, when I'm starting to put stuff in, I'm still going to sit there and go, okay, well, what do I need to do? I really want a little bit more of a knee dominant movement here. Okay. But in season, so I don't really want a lot of concentric load. So trap bar deadlift could be an option. Well, let's put that there. But trap bar deadlift, how many trap bars do I have? If everyone's rolling through that, do I have enough to put there? So you start building these little arguments and going back and forth. You go, well, how about we look at maybe a box squat? Because they've actually done some trap bar deads for a while. I feel like their backs are starting to tighten up. Maybe I rotate to a back squat. These things start to evolve in your mind, and you staring at a screen of one exercise is what takes the most amount of time. So what I've tried to do is, for me, I've tried to absorb that for my coaches, because the initial base program is what gives you a lot of those arguments. Once you've got it there, my coaches, when they go through, they then do what we term extensions. So they'll add extensions to a program. So, for example, if I've written a field sport program, then it flows down to one of my coaches, and he has a baseballer. So with a baseball, they're going to have an extension of swinging and throwing. So they're the 2 extensions that will go into the program. So within our program sequence, they know exactly what exercises to remove. So we have an A sequence, B sequence, C sequence. Any extensions will go B2, C1, C2. So those exercises, the 3 exercises, they know that they can rotate out. So now they only have 3 exercises to look at and decide whether those 3 exercises are going to be effective for their baseballer. So then they go, right, B2, what's Lockie got put? Lockie's put an overhead press. Okay, well, that's handy, but my baseball is a pitcher. So I actually don't want to really overload it. He's in season. So I'm going to rotate that out, and I'm actually going to supplement that in for something a little bit more shoulder health. So instead, we might be doing a kettlebell armbar. So that goes in. Boom, that was an easy one, because he didn't need to argue with anything. He doesn't have this just blank piece of paper not knowing. He knows exactly what he's changing it and what he's going to put in there. So the next one goes, okay, so I've taken care of the shoulder health. Now, from a rotational point of view, Lockie here, he's put a suitcase carry. Okay, fantastic for that oblique sling, good mid-session, but I've done a lot of anti-rotation with this baseball the last block, so I really want to try and find some rotational power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop that out, and I'm going to put a med ball throw in there. Perfect. Boom. So suddenly it takes a lot quicker for them to decide whether their request is to match the single exercise I have there versus this plethora of exercises on an empty page that can sometimes take the longest. That's what takes a long time, sitting there deciding and arguing how you're going to lay it out and what you're going to put in. As you get older, you get better at that, because I think Mike Boyle probably says it best, that the more you know, the less options there are. And I think that's a key thing to understand, that, as you get older and as you start to become a more efficient coach, you start to see what things work well and what things don't. And the other part of it is you're starting to go, well, someone proved to me that I wouldn't put this exercise in because I can't think of a better exercise for what I want to get out of it. Versus when you're a young coach and you've got 1,000 exercises to choose from, that's what takes your time up. I reckon I probably often sit there going, far out. I've done this for 12 weeks now, and the goals I want out of this block, this exercise still ticks those boxes. So maybe I keep it in, so you start arguing with yourself going, and at the end of the day, your athlete doesn't care as much because everything else rotates around. You can stimulate, but you're like, you know what? We could actually roll this again. It's still going to be just as effective for what I want. All I'm changing is speeds, reps, sets, whatever it might be. So yeah, to answer your question, probably from back 5 minutes ago, I think the idea behind sharing that system, I'm more than happy to do it. And to be honest, I might even do a little webinar for it as well, so people can get an understanding of the concept.
Yeah.
Because it is a system that we've built out for a while now that certainly has been tested and starting to really hold up with the number of athletes we have, especially our athlete total is close to doubled over the past 4 months. So that shows you that we can double our athletes and still continue to produce effective programs.
Okay. Do you guys have ones for hypertrophy, just GPP, general physical preparedness, like general population stuff?
We don't have general population. Our 5 base programs are track, which is obviously track and field, but also cycling. So our cycling, because of the concentric force production, we include that under there. We have ice, water, and snow. So that is obviously, they don't have any traction to anything. They can't put their force into much there. So that's a different base program. We have our field sport program. We have our court-based program, and we have our combative. So they're our 5 major base programs that we stem everything off. Within that, it depends whether it's in season, pre-season, off season. So when we talk about GPP, so for example, my field-based program, which I'm actually writing today, that I need to get done for my coaches because they'll yell at me if it's not finished, need to make sure that they are going into their current off season. So for them, they will start to breed a more GPP orientated program. So the GPP is not a base program. It is the influence, or at least the concept behind the current program with a field sport athlete. And then we talk about things like hypertrophy. That'll be an extension. So if we've identified an athlete that needs hypertrophy, then they simply get a volume addition to their program.
Got it. That's great. I'm going to email you personally about that later. I have another question over the email. But we're talking about, actually, I want to go one more on that. Not on that specifically, but we mentioned that's one thing that you've systematized that has made your business and your coaching keeps more efficient. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you'd want to mention?
Well, to be honest, there's a number of little things. Like we've sort of systemized our resilience programming. So it removes, to be honest, most of the systems we build are to remove that stagnant decision making I spoke about, where you're sitting there with a plethora of ideas and not sure how to hone it down onto the program. So things like our resilience, we've systemized. Certainly we've systemized our plyometric training. So based on what our athletes are up to within phases. So we know exactly what library of exercises that the coaches will choose from for that to make sure that they evolve in the right direction. We're currently in the process of working around trying to systemize our testing, our structure far more, because we have systemized our blocks within our facility. We do 5-week blocks. Each week has a specific periodization theme. So again, our coaches don't need to overthink things. They can follow that periodization theme. From that as well, we look at then our testing structure. We've systemized every 5 weeks. We roll in some testing options, which allow the program to continue to flow. We don't lose training time for testing. So yeah, most of it is just an evolution of from our programming structure, how we then systemize everything else, just to make sure that regardless of the number of athletes that come on board, regardless of the sports they're doing, our systems don't change, because ultimately our systems have built our culture, and that's the culture we want to keep. We back in the day there was an over exaggeration of individualization. Which I really don't like. I think the concept of individualization is a little bit thrown around. Our programs are all individual to the athlete based off their sport, their injury history, their position, and their needs. That doesn't mean we change the program for the sake of change. And a lot of stuff that I talk to my athletes about, that if your program is completely different to the base program, it means that you're so far away from the ideal that it's probably going to hurt you long term. For me, if I've got a field-based program and I've decided that elevated deadlift is the ideal exercise that I want to use at this time in their training block, and then I've decided to change that for an athlete, that means that they're one step away from what I've considered to be ideal. So as an athlete, technically you kind of want to be as close to that base program as possible, because it means you don't really have any injuries. You're not thrown around by anything. You're not pulling up sore from different things. You're actually given the green light to do the full performance program. Now, we all know there's going to be different modifications here and there based off history. The older the athlete gets, the more modifications there's going to be. But that's the thing that creates a lot of culture at our facility, that instead of everyone having a different A1 exercise and everyone on their phones looking at or on the iPad, grabbing their different things, not talking, someone's over there doing trap bar deadlift, other one's doing a jump squat, other one's doing a box squat, the other one's doing an elevated deadlift. Suddenly, no one's working with each other or talking. They're all doing 1,000 different programs and exercises. So with this style and the way we set it up is it allows athletes to actually work together with some of their key lifts. So when we have a trap bar deadlift as a key lift, we might have 5 or 6 people in that group doing that trap bar deadlift. So guess what they do? They start to introduce themselves. They start to relate with each other and work with each other. I sort of joked to Carl the other week that our culture is getting so good at the moment that it might be its own undoing, because we have athletes now going on dates with each other, maybe sleeping with each other every now and then. And it's, for me, shows that we're getting close, that people are actually forming bonds and interests, and people have 21st birthdays, and guess who half of the guests are? It's other athletes that they train with. They didn't know them before they came to Athletes Authority, but they now consider them close friends. And that's what we want to build. We want to build a team away from their team. Or if they're an individual athlete, a team that they feel like they're a part of, and then they're not alone when they're training. They may have to go to the pool and be alone a little bit. They might have to go to combative things and be alone a bit. That's fine. But when they come to Athletes Authority, whether they're combative, basketball or tennis, whatever it is, they've got a team. And as I said, that's what we like to see. I'll just make sure we don't have too many people going on dates with each other and it not working out if it doesn't. But
you never know how it could backfire, because you created such a cohesive connection between everybody. But do you think you guys have created that environment as a result of the coaches and the leaders like you and Carl leading the way, that these are the standards, like it comes from the top down, and so all the clients and athletes feel like, you talk about energy of the coaches, you talk about certain standards. Do you think that's why the environment is the way it is with your athletes, or something else as well?
I actually think it's got to build that, it's got to be top down and bottom up. And what I mean by that is top down, meaning, of course, myself and Carl need to be able to lead that. Our coaches need to be able to believe in it and lead that. You need to build an environment that fosters that, and that's related to the way we connect with athletes, the way we talk to athletes, what we give pride to, how we program to allow athletes to work together and things like that. But it also is a matter of the athletes you're bringing in. Early iterations of Athletes Authority, we would kind of say yes to everyone. And ultimately, we now know that was one of the key reasons why we wouldn't form a culture as strong as we wanted. Now we're very picky. We certainly don't bring everyone on. And if for us, it's about making sure the athletes that are coming on are dedicated athletes. And the ones, if I've got an elite athlete that's lifting, they don't want to lift next to someone that doesn't take it seriously. That builds resentment, that builds annoyance, and that doesn't build culture. When we start to bring on athletes that align with the same values, very, very similar to our intern program, if we start to bring on athletes that align with the values that we're catering for, suddenly that culture evolves. Suddenly they start to build that working habit, that connection with each other, that then continues to build the culture that we want.
That, I don't know if people caught what you just said there, but you've set the lines in the sand and standards where you've said no to business and money because there are more things that you've learned are important than that. Is that right?
Yes, but I'd argue that saying no actually says yes to more business and more money, because you don't taint your product.
So it's long-term thinking.
Exactly. Like we have a lot of referrals, and we say it all the time. We've got a pretty poor business model, to be honest, because if we're successful, our athletes get taken by the pros, so we lose them. But also because of our athletes believing the value that they get from us, they don't tell their other teammates or their other people they're competing with. So, if we get someone from a track and field team,
Wow, that's interesting.
we don't get anyone else from that team because
Wow.
the person doesn't want to spread the word. Now, there's examples of some of the younger kids that we do get, and they hear about it, and parents ask, well, what are they doing? And they give them referrals. But that's where we get our referrals from. So it's a tough one because our athletes treat it as their little secret. But we love that. That's fine by us. But that's where, from our point of view, we don't want to ruin that. And if we start to water it down, then that's the risk you take, and you start to not be able to sell the product that you're so proud of. And that's exactly where we're exceptionally proud of the product we currently have. And that's what we can push to our athletes or new athletes coming on board. As soon as we start bringing in people that don't align with the beliefs, then it starts to go out the door.
Yeah, it's like a, I don't know, it's like a poison, or it's like a little bit of like a coloring in water. It just slowly spreads.
Yeah.
You said you guys doubled your athlete base or client base within like this year.
So after COVID, yeah. So over COVID, we actually increased our athlete numbers because we had people approaching us and wanting to come on board during the COVID period, so we could look after them. And then they stayed on when we reopened. And since reopening, we've if you include COVID now, we're close to double what we had going into COVID. Yeah.
Okay, so many businesses suffering, but there's a couple, and there's quite a few like you guys who are doing the right things, the right systems, like culture, all these ticking boxes. But how did that happen? How did you guys get to that point where you can almost double your client base in the middle of one of the hardest times in the 21st century?
I think there's a couple of reasons that all go together. One, by coming back, all of our athletes, but also other athletes that really appreciate their training, understood how much they missed having connection of coaches. It made them appreciate the in-person, the team, the camaraderie that they didn't get. Yeah. There's certainly people out there, probably more general pop than athletes, that have found a new love for training at home, maybe have found it easier than going to the gym and stuff like that. But definitely with the athletes we've come across, and from an athletic population, they are just absolutely hated not having people to train with, not having someone to push them, to drive them. So that's been a big part of it. We also, from most of our stats, we kind of believe we've probably hit a bit of a critical mass as well. Yeah. of people's awareness of us. We had a number of people that joined, a number of athletes that joined us. And look, COVID may have been that kick in the bum for them to do it, but they sort of came to us and said, look, we heard about you guys 6 months ago, and then 2 weeks ago, another one of my friends was talking about you, and I thought, geez, that's a sign to come. And to be honest, we had a hell of a lot of that. The other part of it is our evolution of our performance rehab department. So we now have 3 physios on board. And the rehab that we've been doing, and in particular the ACL stuff, it's funny, we over the COVID period, myself, our 2 physios at the time, sat down and built out what we consider to be the number one ACL protocol in the world. We're obviously biased, but it is every single day, every single exercise, every single set, rep, every progression accounted for 9 months, written it out, all our exit criteria, everything just planned and mapped out perfectly. Obviously, no rehab goes perfectly, but nonetheless, the template's there. And from that, we said, right, we really need to, we've tested all of these methods and ideas separately, whether it be me in a sporting context, the other physios in their clinic or sporting context, and we grabbed all these ideas and amalgamated them together. And the old story of build it and they will come was certainly true with it, because when we returned, we actually had one of our old athletes who did his ACL over the COVID period return to us. And we said, oh, great. Not great you did your ACL, but here's a day one athlete that we will start using this brand new ACL protocol with us that we've amalgamated, and let's go for it. And he's made so much progress. And he's now at week 14. And between him coming on board and now week 14 of his ACL, we have had close to 24 ACLs come on board. Most of them straight from surgery. And these guys are ones that have heard about us, seen things on Instagram or content, and said, I had a previous ACL and the rehab was terrible, or I've redone my ACL, or I've just done my ACL. I want to make sure I do the right things. I want to make sure that it's done properly, and I want to come to you guys and sign up. 9-month rehabilitative process. It's a 9-month contract. They're in the doors, and away they go. So I think at the moment we're up to almost 30 ACLs that we're managing, and that's just since the COVID period. And like I said, it's not because we've been advertising ACL. It's not anything to do with that. It's simply word starts to spread, surgeons start to hear, so we get more surgical references from that. And I think it's one of those things that it is that critical mass. The more people you start to influence, the more they start to talk about it. And yeah, it's simply how it's become.
9-month contract. I know that's what you guys do at Athletes Authority. You do contracts with people. I haven't gotten into details with it with you guys, and it's something that I've implemented over the last, 2 years. But how do you guys structure it? And basically, you have a 9-month contract. One question is, if people pull out, because they might, and I'm sure it happens, what's the stakes? What's the accountability? Like I think Strength Culture, they do like you have to pay a $300 thing if you leave before the 3 months. And how do you have that conversation to establish long-term thinking so they're more bought into the idea of like, this is a 9-month contract for my health and well-being?
Yep. So we actually do 12-month contracts. The 9-month was only for ACL. So with our rehab ones, 9-month is sort of the minimum that we tend to do with our rehab stuff, with exceptions. But there's, so we do 12-month, I'll start with the performance side. We do 12 months for our ADP, or our performance contracts. We're big believers that at the end of the day, if you want to be an elite athlete, it's not a 3-week commitment. It's not a 4-month commitment. It is a long-term commitment that you're making. That was made very clear to them. And certainly if they're not prepared to make that commitment, then that's a filter for us. We don't bring them on, because historically we know the people that are not committed are the ones that don't bring the culture that we want. And we put a lot of front-end effort into setting up programs for testing, getting them going, that we simply can't afford to put in the amount of effort we put in at the front end for them to then leave after 3 months. Obviously, we back ourselves in to say that we don't want them to leave, but ultimately, it's just what happens. People get flaky. People lose drive. They lose enthusiasm for things. They move clubs or teams and stuff like that. So for us, it is a 12-month contract, or find someone else. Not quite as aggressive as that, but just, it's probably not the right fit for you.
Yeah.
But then the other part of it is making sure that, they're aware of that, but we've seen previously that the ones that don't commit like that are the ones that do, they're flaky. They don't value what they're getting if they don't pay for it. They don't commit to it. So we do put a lot of value on what we charge and why we charge it long term, because it does create much more sense of value to that person for their commitment. If they choose to leave now, we're still very understanding people. If we've had people that get pro contracts, done. See you later. No issue whatsoever. We have people that lose their job. No worries. We have people that moving cities or countries. Obviously, these are the type of big things that they can't directly influence, that we're not suddenly going to send debt collectors around to their house to pay out 6 months worth when there's clearly things going on. So anything like that that's even remotely understandable, we're more than happy to chat with them. But if someone simply decides that, it's just not for them anymore after signing a 12-month contract, they're committed to it. So there's a number of ways, there's a number of payout options that Carl goes through with them. But ultimately, if they just refuse to pay, then they fall into our debt collection service, which we use very infrequently, thank God, because I don't really like the idea of it. But at the end of the day, we can't be investing all this time and money into athletes, and then, like I said, it very rarely happens, and then they just leave. So then that falls into the debt collection side.
Totally understandable, and it's no wonder you guys have that culture and environment, because everybody's bought into the commitment. That's made very clear with you guys. One of the last things, I don't know how long we'll talk for. How much time? You're a busy motherfucker, right? And the one thing I remember is you haven't been able to jump on some of the group ones because you've been coaching, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you balance? Something I asked Carl as well. How do you think about where you put your time with your family, with your business, with your personal leisure, just hobbies, whatever you like doing, and not feel like you're ever a slave to a system or a game that you're trying to play in life and the pursuit of whatever excellence you're trying to achieve?
I don't ever feel like I'm a slave, but I certainly don't. Like, it's not ever really been a strong suit of mine, work-life balance, and I probably think it's a bit of a myth because I don't think you will ever have a consistent period where you're in work-life balance. For me, work-life balance is more of an average that you look at the end of the year. At the moment, I'm certainly not in work-life balance for the next couple of days because we start our new training block next week. So I'm doing a lot of programming. I'm in front of computers, getting stuff set. We're also got a few business things going on at the moment that are dragging a lot of time. So I naturally will be in that business mode. But then you've got to look at it, as I said, from a more of a yearly average. Do you make time to then shift that pendulum across to just the family side, where you do close the computer for days at a time, where you actually go and do things where you don't think about work, and that is something that myself and Carl have been really trying to get better at. I know my wife is always on me that I've never got enough time. It's always work and work and work. Obviously, she's very understanding most of the time, but there's certainly times where she runs out of patience with it. But that's something for me to develop, and I'm happy to admit that I'm not great at it. But there's little things where, for me, trying to find the time. So, for example, I try not to go into the facility on a Thursday. It's a very quiet day. I have my coaches there. I don't need to be there. So I spend my Thursday trying to get all of my programming done for my athletes and get everything set and ready to go. So on the weekend, I can actually maybe close the computer and spend some time with the wife. Now, this week, obviously, I can't do that with the new block starting, but just what it is. So I think people probably need to try and step back and say, okay, well, instead of trying to create this work-life balance where every day I do a little bit of this and this, and there's this nice, perfect blend, people have got to accept that there's going to be blocks of time that are all work.
Absolutely.
And try and have blocks of time where it's all family. Have blocks of time where there's all hobbies. And there's certainly going to be things you can trickle in amongst that that is a little bit more continuous. So, like, for me, to be honest, you say hobbies, I don't really have many hobbies, to be honest. I'm a bit boring like that. But for me, it's been a real focus since coming back from COVID that I do train every day. That's been a real big focus on me, because that was always the first thing. Like, if I had to set something up for an athlete or put something in for an athlete or do something for an athlete, that I'd always just put my stuff to the side and make sure that was done, ready to go. So I've been really making a conscious effort to just put that to the side for just an hour, get my training done, and then always just in my head go, I'll find the time, I'll do it. But trying to make sure that I keep that going. And I've sort of been joking around a bit on social media that I am making a football comeback. So hopefully at the moment, it's something that I've been trying to have as a bit of a goal for me to keep me accountable. So I am going to try and play a bit of football next season.
You're actually going to do it?
100% I am, yeah. So
Awesome.
33, the old 13-year retirement, come out and see how it goes. So yeah, that's the goal at the moment. It at least gives me the threat of pre-season, me being the pasty bloke at the back of the pack. I want to make sure that I at least can hold my own a little bit. So it puts a bit of pressure on me to make sure that I keep a little bit of training up.
Nice.
And then obviously wanting to play, I obviously want the body to hold up and be ready to go. So things like that have been really good for me, just trying to set some more longer term external goals that keep me accountable day to day. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an easy solution for people out there to do work-life balance, because it's something I struggle with, but it's something that I think the best way to look at it is you're always going to be swinging one way or the other. It's not this perfect median every single day of the week.
Yeah, I think it's like seasons: winter, summer, autumn, spring.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, swing around. Exactly right. Yeah.
Each one has its own variances.
Great.
This comeback of yours, you're pretty much, I would assume, going through like a athletic development, really athletes authority style programming. What are you feeling? How's your body feeling? How's it? Daily
good.
training?
Surprisingly good. I went down on Friday night. One of my best mates is a track coach, and he runs a track and field team. So I went and did some speed work with them, and mate, to be honest, felt really good at the time. Geez, the next 2 days I was really struggling. It's been a while since I've put that type of pace behind me, but it was good. It was really good. So it's been fantastic. I've one of my interns who's now turned coach, manages my strength program, Nathan. So he's been doing a great job of that, putting up with me, skipping things here and there, cutting things short, keeping me accountable. So it's been good. But yeah, no, definitely trying to do the old holistic approach. Get out on the field 3 times a week, get in the gym 3 times a week, and trickle in a little bit of work in between.
When's the return to play? What's the month we're looking at?
Well, pre-season starts last week of November, so I've got a three or 4 weeks to get myself ready for pre-season. Then pre-season goes through to about March, I think it is, and then my first child is due March 1. So I don't know how that's going to go down with the wife at the moment. So maybe missing a bit of football for that.
You know what? I guess we can make an exception.
Yeah, exactly.
For the kid. Hey, congratulations, man.
Where it swings, yeah.
I hope everything goes well there. I didn't know that.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
One of the last things I wanted to ask you, you would have seen in the email, we talked about these foundational pillars for coaches. And I wanted that, all right, now for athletes and just people who want to be total human high performers, what are these universal kind of principles and pillars that you believe in that people should do to optimize total human athletic performance?
It's a pretty broad question. It's very, realistically, from a broad standpoint, it's very simple. You got to make sure, sleep and nutrition are your 2 big ones. They're the ones that fuel everything. If you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, then you can't expect to perform at all. The next evolution of that is, good aerobic capacity. There's very few sports in this world that I think would not benefit from having a good aerobic base. Because for me, that is the well of recovery. Being able to have a good aerobic capacity really does help you across pretty much all sports. And then understanding from that what are going to be your weak links associated with your sport, because that's the area that builds your resilience. Knowing if you're a high speed sport that hamstrings, calves, these type of things are going to be a problem area because they're going to be exposed to a lot of load. So understanding the importance of supplementing resilience work into programs, and then as a whole, being strong and powerful. It's one of the keys. It's, for me, builds the structure, the foundation for everything you're going to be doing in most sports. Obviously, there's always going to be exceptions, but that is a key. And then the next level is going to be the mental game, because that encompasses everything. High performers, whether they be an athletic high performance or corporate high performance, it doesn't matter. The mental side of it, being able to problem solve, being able to think ahead, be able to think on your feet, being able to structure days, weeks where you have times, you have tasks that are going to develop your mental skills, whether that be things like meditation, mental practice, or anything like that, but also understanding how you can be the most effective with your time. Where we talked a little bit about systems today, but even little things around, to-dos, mapping out calendars, whether journaling helps you. These type of things is so important from an athletic standpoint or a day-to-day high performer, as you say, because they're the things that start to sharpen the swords. They're the things that make sure that you're always on top of your game, your attention to details there. I live from my to-do list and my calendar, and if it wasn't, I'll be absolutely shattered. As soon as something happens, I write it in there straight away, organize it later. But if I don't have that there, and some people come from the age of, if you rely on your to-do list, then you don't use your memory and stuff like that. Quite frankly, if I relied on my memory for the amount of things that I get, like if you're on the gym floor, you got 3 or 4 different athletes tell you 3 or 4 different things that you got to remember. I got to put it away. As people say things in meetings, and you go if you don't have a central place, and I'm a big believer in getting things out of my head, because when I feel like I have things in my head, I always feel like there's something I need to do or something I've forgotten, the more I can get it out of my head and into my, whether it's on paper for me, my phone's everything to me. It goes into that app to be able to store, and I know it's out of my head, and I don't need to worry or get that feeling of I haven't done something. So there's a fairly broad answer, I know, but
no, it's okay.
It helps, yeah.
What do you think? Okay, let's get more specific to finish. What is the thing people you think do the worst consistently, and how do you think they can address it?
The worst consistently, I reckon. There's a great proverb that says the palest ink is better than the best memory. And for my mind, I think that's probably what people do the worst is they firmly believe that they will remember things when in realistic terms, they probably won't. Whether that's not writing notes for something because, oh yeah, I'll remember that. Or not putting a to-do down when they think about it because they think they'll remember it. Things like that, I think is probably, from a broad term, is a big weakness that I see with a lot of people. Again, going the opposite of when people say use your brain or you lose it. I'm probably a big believer that, to be honest, if you rely on your brain to remember everything that goes on, especially in a dynamic environment, like if you're not doing anything during the day, you're going to be okay. But if you're a young strength conditioning coach and you're most likely working 3 different jobs with a plethora of different athletes, general pop teams, coaches, other trainers, education, all these type of things, to be able to have a well laid out system of to-dos, calendar, and recording of notes, I think is probably a big key area that people just need to nail. And if that changes, like I used to change the way I kept notes or things all the time, that doesn't matter. You'll evolve, you'll change, things will work better for you in different environments. But yeah, if you don't have something, I definitely think you'll start to lose track of things, come undone. And there's nothing more that I hate than when an athlete is on a floor and comes up to me and says something about, oh, someone didn't put this in, or this is missing, or I remember I told so-and-so about this and it's not in there. I hate it. It irks me inside. And for me, it's an embarrassment. And that's something that I hate to, and I've been there. I've fucked up as well. I've done it. Everyone's done it. But that's the feeling that I hate having that feeling. So for me, it's just a big thing to be accountable and have that attention to detail. And to do that, you probably need to work out what works best for you.
That's definitely something we have in common. Because memory is the brain is it's a flawed organ, right? We can't remember everything, and it's I think I'm a voracious note taker, and I love taking notes, but through this conversation, if I didn't, like you said many things, and I've been jotting down, okay, I have that, I want to talk about that. If I didn't do that, then I wouldn't be able to circle back to half the things we talked about because you said so many interesting things. So I want to second what you're saying because it facilitated this conversation.
I agree, 100%.
So, Lachlan Wilmot, is there anything else on your brain that you want to get out?
Wow, what a question.
Like you said before, like you don't want to let things build up. Is there anything else that you want to leave people with? Anything you want to talk about that maybe we haven't or publicly?
To be honest, there's probably nothing I want to talk about. Certainly for anyone that's listening that's in Melbourne at the moment with everything opening back up, obviously send my love and best to everything starting to fire up, and I hope that everyone comes back with as much fire and passion as our athletes came back with, and I'm sure it'll breed out quickly. But it's for our industry. I think the next 2 years are going to be a very interesting 2 years of evolution from the pro sector that's already had a huge change and coaches have already stepped away or lost their jobs already. So I think it's going to be a very interesting 2 years for the private sector and how they handle that. And also very interesting to see how all the new Instagram content producers will go, because there's certainly been a huge influx of coaches jump on the old Instagram.
I
haven't noticed.
I haven't paid attention.
There's certainly a lot of content now going out, which is great. It helps everyone. But
I sense there's something inside you tell us how you really feel.
No, I think it's fantastic. It's just, as I say, I think I said it before on one of the other chats that there's had. There may be people that have been on there that have a little tongue-in-cheek joke about coaches that do post things on Instagram, and now suddenly they're posting things on Instagram, and I think it's great. I think it's a great way to connect and to put content out there, providing you don't get caught up in the swell that is social media. But I think everyone with COVID has realised, holy crap, I probably can't rely on my current job, and suddenly they're looking at that plan B or side hustle, as some people call it. So it has been interesting to see the shift.
Hold on, you said something. Okay, you said something interesting. I just need to talk about. 2 years, the interesting next 2 years. You're very experienced. You've seen a lot. What do you think we're gonna see? I know you said shift from pro to private, but if you were like Nostradamus making some predictions, what would you prepare us health professionals for over the next 2 years of changes?
I would suggest one. There's certainly going to be. I don't want to predict it, but there's certainly going to be a thinning of coaches within the professional sector, and a professional sector. And I personally believe that's going to come a detriment to the athletes. So from an injury standpoint, I think potentially you're probably going to see some increase in injuries, and probably going to see increase in time out due to injury, and potentially reoccurrence start to go up, simply because it's just very hard to handle such large lists with such small departments. I then think you'll start to see the private sector flourish a little bit with some real senior coaches that probably step into some private scenarios, which, whether that be current facilities acquiring higher level coaches than they probably usually would have, or new facilities starting up with coaches looking at opportunities to build out some private sector work. I think there's probably going to be more pressure on Cert 3, Cert 4 coaches, where the desire to be a high quality coach is there now. Your AIF couple of week course is not going to stand up to a lot of the coaches that are now coming back into the private sector. But yeah, it'll be interesting. As I said, really none of that could happen. I could just be spitballing stuff, but I certainly think there will be a bit of a shift around. I've already seen, we brought on a guy called Tom Watkins, who was over at Rugby Fiji, and with COVID, they had to shut everything down there. So he came back to Sydney, and he's come on board with us. So we've got a great high quality coach that otherwise would have been in Fiji working with the rugby league team there. So there's just one example of us going forward. A number of other people I know have brought on professional coaches to work in schools or stuff like that, simply because Nathan Parnham's another example. He was from Rugby Sevens, worked with me at Parramatta. He's now at St. Augustine's, heading up their S&C program, and he was at Newington before that, so he's got a phenomenal expertise around the high school area. But I think St. Augustine's have got the coup of the year to get someone with that experience to come in and reshape their program. So again, they're just little examples of where these real senior experienced coaches are moving into roles that otherwise maybe wouldn't have gotten them if the professional setting was flourishing like it probably was a couple of years ago.
So what are you most excited for Athletes Authority in the next year? The releasing projects that you're excited for that you want to, tell me about. No one's watching.
Tell you about? Probably nothing I want to tell you about. But no, we've got some exciting things on the horizon. Two major ones that next year that we're looking at pushing out is I'll be running once COVID starts to allow us to get face-to-face again, but we'll be putting together a bit of a performance certification. So a bit of a mentorship that I'll be running, plus a bit of a certification within that, which will be really good. And also looking at a physiotherapy or a performance physio certification. So, which will be targeted at physios, upskilling them to a level where our physios are, where they coach on the gym floor, their understanding of all sets of reps, exercises, progression, systems. Because I think that's the way forward for physiotherapy as well, because a lot of people are starting to realise that you can't just have someone on the plinth and that's it. They understand that they've got to get them strong, they've got to get them moving and mobile and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Lachlan Wilmot, I could ask 100 more questions because you're a very experienced man, but I think we'll end it there. Thank you very much for taking the time, man. I hope we can do this one day in person, whether I'm where you are or you guys are in Melbourne. Otherwise, any last thoughts or just where you want to point people and where they can find you?
No, I appreciate it, mate. Really loved being on, and so thanks for taking the time to do all of these as well. They've been fantastic. So hopefully they continue even outside of COVID when we can keep pushing content out. And like you said, man, in person be fantastic. So hopefully we can do that soon. Other than that, mate, yeah, if people want to reach out, like I said, it's especially people in Melbourne that maybe are struggling with some reopenings or want any information between myself and Carl, feel free to hit me up. I'm pretty slow on Instagram. If you pop into my message requests, I don't see you for a long time. But I do a try. So usually, probably if you feel free to fire me an email if there's anything of pressing that you want to chat about. But that's lachlan.wilmot@athletesauthority.com.au. So feel free. I'm happy to help out where I can.
Good man, Lachlan Wilmot. I'll see you when I see you.
Thank you, legend. Speak soon.
All right. See you, brother.
See you, mate.
Lachlan Wilmot, ladies and gentlemen, the co-owner of Athletes Authority. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. First time doing a one-on-one with him. He's been on many of our previous podcasts with the Coaches Roundtable Orphic podcast. If you guys want to hear more of him, you can there. We've had talked to him multiple times in a group. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed that. We talked systems, business, communication, conflict resolution, programming. Note how the systems that they've created and he's created for himself in order to make decisions quicker. Something that I keep seeing consistently through every person I talk to on the Orphic podcast and my own personal podcast is this common theme. And I think something very valuable to take away. And I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I'm Alexander Emmanuel Sandalis. You could find me on the internet. You can find Orphic Education, obviously, everywhere. YouTube, all podcast platforms these are on. So you guys can watch them later. And we're going to keep doing these for until I keep breathing air. So enjoy, guys. Any requests? Any people you want to see on? Let us know. Or if you want to do a Certificate 3 in 4 in fitness and you actually want to separate yourself with, one of the highest quality Cert 3-4s in fitness in Australia, in our subjective opinion, and you're committed to the idea of being a great coach and just something great and not just average, and investing in a future career, we might be a good fit for you. Let us know. You guys can contact us. Otherwise, we're going to keep pumping out the best free content by any provider that we've seen in this country, regardless. So I hope you guys really enjoy these and take value from them. I'm very grateful to do them. Thank you, and I'll see y'all next week.